It just seemed like it'd be best not to go down that path.
All right, boys and girls, and there we have it. Our talk on peer pressure today. I hope that today's lesson was interesting for you. And remember, you need to surround yourself rather with people who will impact your life positively. Positive peer pressure is what we're looking for, but we can't avoid negative peer pressure in terms of it will come, but when it comes, we must learn to say no. Until we meet again next time, be positive, stay positive, and if you are the one to pressure somebody, make sure that it is positive peer pressure. Bye.
For you today, would just like to welcome um, some very special persons in the audience today, representatives of our teacher training institutions. We have Mr. Rudolph Sewell from MICO, Mr. Ricardo Bennett from Sam Sharp, Miss Dorrit Campbell from Edna Manley. We have Winsome Francis from St. Joseph's Teachers College, Mrs. Claudette Barrett Marsh from Shortwood Teachers College, and Miss Nastasia Mattis from NCU. We also have in our audience to make presentations today the Minister of Education and Youth, the Honorable Favour Williams, Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Mr. Mattis Amuda, the Honorable Mattis Amuda, and someone who should be here more often but doesn't attend us as often as he should, Minister of Local Government and is it Community Development, sir? The Honorable Desmond Mackenzie. We will start off this morning with the Honorable Favour Williams, who has a very important presentation to make, as well as some announcements. Minister Williams.
Thank you, Minister Morgan. Good morning, everyone. Let me acknowledge as well colleague ministers, Mackenzie, Minister Samuda, and Minister Morgan, the team from the Ministry of Education and Youth, our principals of our teachers' colleges, members of the media, Jamaicans all, good morning. Our commitment has been to keep the nation updated on the progress of the new school year. This week marks the second week, and our regions have reported that all primary and secondary schools are back in session. In the early childhood sector, early childhood institutions are also back in session. Yesterday, we held the official national launch of the 2023-2024 school year at St. Hilda's in Brownstown, St. Anne. I was very impressed with the dedication and commitment of students and teachers there. Representative students and teachers from all the regions were present, and I'm sure all over social media by now are the displays of the various booths from the various schools showing the skills of our students in science, technology, home economics, and other areas. I can also report that our teachers have been engaged since August in assessing some 45,000 grade 1 students for their readiness for grade 1 in order that we have the data so our teachers can know how to guide students' learning. Through the Department of School Services and the National Parent Support Commission, I'm happy to report that 40,199 parents were trained to improve their parental skills. This is a significant initiative in collaboration with the Ministry of National Security, in particular, Citizen and Security Program. As you know, parents are very important stakeholders in education, and to start the new school year with so many parents engaged due to this program is very encouraging. We believe this is the beginning of improved parent-teacher relationships and greater involvement of our parents in a constructive way in the lives of their children as they make their way to and from school, and that our parents will know more about what is happening with them. The National Parent Support Commission and the Department of School Services monitored the parental engagement programs in 556 schools, and we're expecting to see increased positive behaviors in those schools. I want to urge parents to continue to be active and constructive in their children's education, in their, not just their academic lives, but also their holistic development. Shifting now to exams. Yes, I know school has just begun, and here we are talking about exams. But before I go to that, I want to say that in addition to the 40,199 parents who were trained and now have improved parenting skills, we also conducted training sessions in school-wide positive behavior intervention and support framework known as the SWPBIS, Tier 1, with 120 school teams. So for this new school year, we are also expecting to see improved ability of schools to positively manage students' behavior as a result of these training sessions that were conducted. We conducted refresher sessions, coaching sessions, sensitization sessions. This will also continue in the new school year. It is important to note the work that has been done and what it is that we're coming into the new school year with. In terms of exams, getting back to that, yes, schools have just begun, and here we are talking about exams already. But we want to update the nation that the marking of the grade 5 exam is completed, and these results will be out shortly. Results from the grade 3 diagnostic tests are being posted to the NSRS, which is the National Student Registration System. This is our student database and platform. I also want to let the nation know that we monitored and saw improvement in the delivery of guidance and counseling services within 156 schools. Again, we expect to see this continue into the new year. We want to bolster our efforts to support the socioeconomic development of our students and their families. And finally, I want to welcome again our principals of our teachers' colleges, on whom we depend for teacher education. We're blessed in Jamaica to have 14 institutions, 12 of them are public, and 2 are private that prepare teachers for our schools. And today we have some of the principals of those colleges, and I want to acknowledge them. So if you could roll the slide, please. Starting out west from Sam Sharp Teachers Colleges, and just stand up, please. And that's Ricardo. I'm sorry. Mr. Ricardo Bennett, thank you so much. The next one, I know not all of our principals are here this morning. You know, we have Bethlehem Moravian College in St. Elizabeth, and the next one. Churches Teachers College out in Mandeville, Manchester. G.C. Foster College in Spanish Town. Monique College in Monique St. Anne. St. Joseph's Teachers College. Yes, good morning. The Faculty of Education and Liberal Studies at UTEC. They train teachers as well. Next slide. The School of Education at UWI also trains teachers. Of course, we have just included in our portfolio at the Ministry of Education and Youth, the Vocational Training Development Institute, otherwise known as VTDI, at Gordontown Road. Keep going. Next, please. Shorter Teachers College. Dr. Claudette Barrett, okay, was acting. And of course, Michael University College. And I know Dr. Pinnock is on leave, but we have this morning Mr. Rudolph Sewell, who is acting. And of course, Ms. Campbell from Edmund, the College of the Visual and Performing Arts. College of Agriculture, Science and Education out in Portland. Yes. Dr. Deslandes is here. And a private university, Northern Caribbean University, and we have Ms. Mattis standing in for Dr. Lincoln Edwards. And we also have the private International University of the Caribbean in Montego Bay. So to Jamaicans, I want to say it is knowing that we have these 14 teacher education institutions that give us the assurance as we brace against the global teacher shortage in large developed countries, and you know them, the US, Canada, and the UK in particular. So I want to say thanks to the work of our teacher education institutions over the years. This morning, we're able to report that 380 teacher vacancies have been filled in our schools, and schools are reporting that interviews are still ongoing. We are also seeing a good take-up of teachers being their own replacement. These are those teachers who are approved for 4 months or 8 months leave. A total of 519 have so far decided to forego their leave and remain in the classrooms. Additionally, 68 teachers who were due to retire have decided to remain for some time, and we really thank them for the decisions that they have made. to continue to be in our classrooms with our teachers. Of course, we thank our existing in-service teachers. We thank the new teachers coming in, and again, those who have seen it fit to decide to be in our classrooms, even though they were approved for long leave or retirement. To all our teachers all across Jamaica, we owe you a debt of gratitude. We want to thank you. Thank you for the work that you do and for your commitment to the education sector. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Minister Williams, for that update, and welcome again to the representatives from our teachers' colleges. I'd also like to welcome Dr. Kassan Troop, who is the acting CEO in the Ministry of Education and Youth. Welcome her to this post-cabinet press briefing. We'll now have presentations by Minister Mathison Muda and Minister Desmond McKenzie. I'll ask both if they wish to attend upon the platform. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen here with us present. Allow me to acknowledge colleague ministers. Minister Morgan, thank you for facilitating us this morning. Acknowledging also Minister Williams, Minister of Education, and Minister Desmond McKenzie, Minister of Local Government and Community Development. It is no secret that Jamaica has had significantly lower rainfall over the last 12 months than it would normally enjoy. All but 1 month has had rainfall below its 30-year average. In fact, the period between October and March cumulatively was the lowest rainfall for that 6-month period Jamaica had ever received. With that said, that has caused particular challenges, and we feel it important to address those challenges this morning, or rather to update the country on how we plan to address those challenges going forward. The Cabinet would have received a report on Monday, both from the National Water Commission and indeed the Met Service, and has agreed to take certain steps. We will outline those steps, as well as the coordination that will exist between the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation and indeed the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, to ensure that we are best placed to respond to the challenges that we know citizens are facing, especially in the eastern end of the island. During October normally, it is our peak rainfall period. Jamaica is normally expected during that peak period to have its highest rainfall. Last year, Jamaica received 22% less rainfall for the month of October. We have not recovered since in terms of our inflows. In November, we received 38% below our normal 30-year rainfall. In December, we received 53% below our normal rainfall. In January, 66%, and February, 74% below our normal 30-year rainfall. There was marginal recovery in March, but one can appreciate that the inflows that would take place during this period that would facilitate recharge of both the National Water Commission systems and indeed municipal systems did not take place. There was improved meteorological results in April and May, with only deficits of 8% and 23%. However, rainfall in June did give us some hope. We did exceed normal 30-year rainfall as the 1 month for the year by 2%. However, all parishes did not receive increased rainfall. The western end of the island received significant increases, while the eastern end of the island suffered. July data showed that we received nationally only 63% of our normal rainfall. This was a deficit of 37%. Now, important to note, meteorological drought is defined as a period of well below normal rainfall that spans from a few months to a few years. In fact, Jamaica has had the experience of having drought for a few years in the past, but this drought is particularly extreme. In July, we saw continued declines, and in August, it appears that we would have seen significant declines once again. Certainly, the parishes of St. Mary, St. Thomas, and Portland would have slipped back into drought. And that is a deep concern. We would have received only 61% of normal rainfall. Now, there are other influences, and these need to be considered. There is the El Nino phenomenon. At a press conference earlier this year, Prime Minister Holness would have indicated to the country that we'd entered the El Nino period. This means for the next couple of years we can expect drier than normal conditions. And this is something that we're very clear on. And it's also important to note that with the changing climate and with the changing weather patterns, in July and August of this year, we also would have had the highest temperatures ever experienced in Jamaica during July and August. And that is also a factor that is giving us a hard time. These high temperatures increase the impact and the evaporation, which leads to both hydrological and agricultural drought, which are both being experienced in Jamaica. Now, is there hope? Is there expectation of increased rainfall? Well, there is an expectation of increased rainfall going from mid-September into October, and we are seeing some of that already. There is a projection that there's a 50% projection that we could see above normal rainfall, but it is not conclusive that Jamaica will experience above normal rainfall. As such, we have to manage the resource that we have very carefully. Now, we have seen some rain, and persons are tempted to believe, oh, well, we got rain yesterday, I should have water tomorrow. The reality is that the increases in rainfall that we've experienced since March have not been sufficient to recharge our water systems, either the NWC systems or indeed the municipal systems. And I think with that considered, the government has acknowledged that there will be challenges in the coming months. There will be challenges in the coming weeks. We do hope that we receive our normal October rainfall that would allow us to indeed recharge and give us some space. However, with that considered and with that report, the government has decided to increase its emergency response significantly, and I will come to that perhaps at the end of the presentation as we segue into Minister Mackenzie's presentation. I think important to look at the takeaway is that there is no conclusive increase in rainfall expected. So even when we do get some inflows over a week or so, we will be managing the levels of output very carefully to ensure that as we head into drier months of November, December, January, we don't put ourselves into a particular problem. Now, how has this impacted the National Water Commission? Persons should recall that the National Water Commission does indeed serve 75% of Jamaica. That is what we call the utility footprint. Now, we've had island-wide impact, but the impact in the eastern end of the island has been severe. And I'd like to go through some of this impact. The facility situation in island-wide is important to note. There are approximately 758 facilities that the NWC operates. We would have had a total of 154 systems severely impacted, and this would have been primarily on the eastern end of the island. We'd have had 15 systems impacted due to significant leak repairs, 81 systems that simply don't have enough flow. So when we say enough drought, we don't have enough input. We'd have also had some issues with JPS with single-phase power, and we'd have also had some issues of mechanical failure. Now, an issue that's often not spoken about, when you get heavy rainfall in an afternoon that may mirror a monthly normal rainfall, it creates issues of turbidity, and that forces us also to close down systems to reduce the flow of silt. Now, this has impacted over the last 6 weeks 809 communities severely, and the government is very cognizant of the impact, both at the residential, the business level, and certainly with our schools and our medical facilities. Now, the impact is primarily on the east, but I think it's important to look at the population center to understand where those flows are and why we're feeling the impact that we are. The next slide shows the system that impacts over 1.5 million persons. This is the systems that deal with St. Catherine, the soon-to-be parish of Portmore, and indeed Kingston and St. Andrew. Now, it also shows St. Thomas, because St. Thomas does function and does provide us significant supply into Kingston. So I think as you look at it, it's important to note that the Rio Cobra scheme, the Wagwater River, the Negro River, the Mona Reservoir, the Yalos River, all play particular roles in providing Kingston and St. Andrew and St. Catherine significant supply. There is also the irrigation systems in St. Catherine, and important to note the alluvial wells that also provide potable water. Now, what is the situation? And the next slide shows that the alluvial wells in Kingston and St. Andrew are pretty much keeping pace, because we've been using them heavier than we would like to. We'd intended to rest them this year with increased flows from other spaces. Our Seaview water treatment plant is only providing 2 million gallons daily when we usually expect 2.6 million gallons. The Constant Spring water treatment plant is providing 5.5 million gallons daily of 18 million gallons normally projected. The Hope water treatment plant, where we would normally pull down between approximately 4.5 million gallons, is only able to provide 3.2 million gallons daily. The Mona system is only able to provide 7.8 million gallons of 16 million gallons daily. We've increased the transfer from Rio Cobre to 6 million gallons to offset some of the reductions. So for those who are experiencing significant and very stressful impact of water lockoffs, we want them to understand that this is what the reduction in rainfall has caused. Now, important to note, the Kingston and St. Andrew major system input is down approximately 40% in total. So we have 40% of our normal supplies in the corporate area. The current levels as at Monday in the Mona Reservoir was 36.1%, which is approximately 27 days of storage at normal usage. The storage situation at Hermitage, having received some rainfall over the last 2 weeks, went up to approximately 53.7%, which is something that we manage very carefully. Now, the inflow trends are also seen, and you will see for both Hermitage and indeed for Mona that we have had less rainfall or less inflows into our system every single month of the year. Now, this is important to understand. The situation at the other major sources show that, Hope River is operating at 20%, the Yalos River is giving us 30%, the Wagwater is giving us 10%, and the Ginger River is giving us 10%. The NWC and our water systems have challenges, ladies and gentlemen. There is no escaping that. It is impatient of debate. We're all aware that we're operating with infrastructure that should have been upgraded constantly over the last 60 years. It is this government that is putting in upgrades to our water network at an unprecedented rate. We're playing catch up with our infrastructure. The country is well aware of that. All of us, the systems that are in place now should have been changed before I was born. However, when you look at the inflows, persons should be very clear as to why we're having water lockoffs. It is not for management failure. It is certainly not for the administration's failure. However, we've taken particular steps to address it. And the reason you're only now seeing the worst impacts of the drought is because of the Kingston and St. Andrew efforts to reduce NRW. In 2015, NRW, non-revenue water, a very curious term. In 2015, non-revenue water in Kingston and St. Andrew, as much of the country, was in excess of 70%. That means 70% of the water that we would collect would either leak or be stolen. This government, through its investment in Kingston and St. Andrew, has moved, and you will see on the screens, has brought it down to 38.1%. With current projects underway and significant investments to come, we expect to bring it in the range of 18 to 20%, which is international standard. There is no water distribution network anywhere in the world that has no NRW. It's unfortunately standard. But in a situation where the climate is changing, and indeed we're seeing significantly and constant reductions in our inflows, we'll not be able to afford to pump our water into the ground before it gets to houses, businesses, and indeed to our critical infrastructure. We've also ensured that significant actions are taken in the short term. We've reactivated wells in Havendale, Beverly Hills, and Cavaliers. We've activated Little Greendale and Government Park 2 wells in Spanish Town, and we've pumped the additional 2 million gallons into the Rio Cobre conveyance system to serve Kingston. We've also removed some unauthorized connections which trigger leaks coming in from Yalas. We've done significant water trucking up to this point, which has cost the Water Commission in excess of 380 million Jamaican dollars thus far this year. We've also done some distribution of storage tanks. But I want to assure residents of the corporate area, residents of St. Catherine, and indeed residents of all of Eastern Jamaica, the investments that are underway will transform your water system. This is not a conversation we expect to have in 2 to 3 years. We expect to build in the resilience that gives us the capacity to deal with our changing weather patterns. One of the investments that will come on stream within 2 years will be the water treatment plant at Content. This government has signed a contract to invest $77 million to provide in excess of 15 million gallons daily into St. Catherine and Kingston. That would reduce the impact of the rainfall reductions that we're seeing. That investment, the contract is signed. We expect that ground to be broken shortly, within months. We expect that development to take no more than 2 years. The projections are between 18 months and 2 years. So the investment is being made where this doesn't become the permanent discussion. The investment in our farmers, in irrigation systems. Right now, we have $50 million US of work taking place in St. Elizabeth in the Essex Valley scheme. Later this year, we will complete negotiations on the Pedro Plains irrigation system, which will ensure $200 million US is invested. Unprecedented investments. So we are playing catch up, but this government is indeed making the investment. But those things take some time. And in the short term, we are aware that it is having a severe impact on households. It's having a severe impact on households, certainly in St. Mary, Portland, St. Thomas. Downtown Kingston is severely impacted. We certainly know of the issues in the hills of St. Andrew. And we have decided to take particular steps, and the government would have approved on Monday 150 million Jamaican dollars to increase emergency response over the coming 4 weeks. Now, it is focused primarily on eastern parishes, but where there are issues with some water systems outside of the east, we will also give residents the support that they desperately need. That $150 million will be broken down with $80 million going to the National Water Commission to increase trucking to critical infrastructure, certainly your hospitals, your schools, your health centers, and indeed homes for the aged, as well as communities along the utility footprint. We've also allocated 10 million Jamaican dollars to the National Irrigation Commission to help with some trucking in the hills of St. Catherine, Clarendon, St. Mary, and where we're having also reduced rainfall. We've also, of that 150 million, $60 million will go to the Ministry of Local Government to increase their support to local communities within these parishes. You see, we accept that no one agency of government or no one ministry of government can provide the sort of support during this sort of crisis that we're experiencing because of the reduced rainfall. And it's why I know I certainly will be leaning on colleague Minister Mackenzie, because his convening power and organizational ability and the capacity that exists at local government is particularly important to make sure we do respond as best as possible to citizens' needs. And I think perhaps with that, Minister Mackenzie, perhaps you could join.
Thank you, colleague. The protocols have been established. I will just get straight into my very short contribution to this aspect of the press briefing. Just to say that the challenges that we face, especially in rural Jamaica with the trucking of water, is one that is of real concern to the administration. This $60 million that have been provided from the $150 million will go a far way in offering some level of relief and support in the respective parishes. Outside of the announcements made by Minister Samuda, the Ministry of Local Government has been working closely with the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation in coming up with answers. And I want to make the point that the water shops that we have been building across the country, we are not saying that this is the answer to the problems of water. But what this has done is that's created an area where people can depend and get portable water without having to worry. We have just concluded the construction of a major facility in St. Elizabeth. Quite recently, we opened the largest water shop built so far, a 30,000 gallon facility in Manchester. And we are looking now to commence work on a new facility in the parish of Clarendon, which is one of those parishes that have a severe problem when it comes on to water. The Ministry of Local Government will be working closely with Minister Semuda on a black tank program for 5 parishes that are severely affected by the water crisis. These tanks will be provided to the municipal corporations to be distributed in communities based on the survey that we have been doing. So we're not just getting the tanks and issuing the tanks just like that. It is based on investigation. It is based on a needs basis. And this program we expect to roll out in the middle of October. I want to say something about Kingston. And Minister Samuda mentioned the efforts that are being made. I represent an urban constituency in the heart of the city. And I tell you, as Minister said, because of the lack of maintenance and investment in the water system, we are seeing serious problems in various communities in downtown Kingston. And so we have provided financial support to the constituencies of South St. Andrew, Southwest St. Andrew, Central Kingston, and West Kingston for the trucking of water. We will continue to do that while working with the National Water Commission in finding the answers, and I think we are reaching there, Minister, because the pipeline which has been laid on Spanish Town Road, once that line is fully activated, will bring some relief to the people in downtown Kingston. I want to make another point which is important, that the resources provided by government, by the government of Prime Minister Andrew Holness, for the trucking of water, for the construction of water shops. These facilities is not to be used to sell water. We are providing water free of cost to all the communities. And I know of cases where people would abuse the system by filling up tanks and going back selling the water to communities. I urge people, once you find that, report it to the municipal corporation or to the Ministry of Local Government. It is a collective response to the water crisis. It is something that we are taking great care, because at the end of the day, it is the government's responsibility to respond. We are not afraid. We are not passing the buck to anybody. But I can say without fear that this administration has done more to improve water systems in this country than any other administration has done. And I challenge anybody to come forward to say that. The Ministry of Local Government over the last calendar year have spent over $150 million on the trucking of water. We have spent some $135 million in building new water facilities across the country. And this year so far, we have gone nearly $40 million in the chucking of water, and we intend to increase that amount. Again, the solution is not there readily. There are communities, especially in rural Jamaica, that it is going to take time for water to get into the pipes. But this government has been working, and we will continue to work to improve the water supply, whether in terms of trucking, water shops, or to the extent of the National Water Commission.
Whenever Minister Mackenzie attends post-cabinet, the people of Jamaica are usually happy because he announces goodies. Thank you very much, Minister Mackenzie. Thank you also, Minister Matthew Samuda, with that very important update. And also, Minister Favour Williams. We will now be accepting questions from members of the media. I know that we have some questions that have been sent to Ms. Francis, but we'll also be accepting from the floor as well. So, Naomi?
Morning, Ministers. Yes, we do have an issue with the traffic with back to school this morning, so we have a couple of our media partners who have sent in some questions. From Ms. Kimone Francis this morning, she's asking Minister Samuda just for an update. She said some years ago the government had announced that they would be going after desalination technology and liquid extraction from the atmosphere as part of major tech project to ease water challenges. Where's the ministry on those plans? And is it still on the table?
So, desalination is a part of Jamaica's water future. There is no way to avoid that because our population and the way we've developed largely lives in the southeastern end of the island, and our water sources are largely in the west, or our productive water sources are largely in the west. So the government is pursuing major projects that will implement desalination technology that will offset reductions in rainfall. The Prime Minister had announced a project last year, March. The Ministry is pursuing this project, and negotiations continue. An update will be provided in short order. But I think important to note, the Ministry is continuing work even ahead of this project being brought to fruition. We are investing $7 billion Jamaican dollars this year in new storage, new pumping and processing capacity, and indeed new lines. Minister Mackenzie would have mentioned the project that would have been completed late last year on Spanish Town Road with a new pipeline. That is $2.5 billion of investment. When we look at what's taking place in Mandeville, a town that has had terrible water supply, certainly all of my life, $4.5 billion is being invested into the Manchester water system. So a number of investments are already underway. We mentioned the Rio Cobre water system. That will also come on stream. Well, certainly will break ground later this year and will come on stream within 2 years. But desal is a part of our future, and we will update the country in short order.
Thank you, Minister. Let's take one from the floor, and then we'll go back to some reporters who are online as well.
Morning, everyone. I'm Jamila Maitland. I'm a reporter at TVJ. My questions are to the Education Minister. A few weeks ago, there was a meeting with the Education Transformation Oversight Committee. A figure was given for Cabinet to approve to implement some of the work being done. Did Cabinet approve the figure, and what was the amount? Also, CXC had said the Education Ministry had provided them with some updates to prevent the leaks that we saw a few weeks ago as well. Are you able to say what was done or what is being done to prevent any sort of leak from happening again?
Can you allow her to answer those? Yes, Minister.
All right, in terms of the first one, yes. Together with the Mona School of Business, we undertook the costing of the implementation of the many recommendations in the report, the Orlando-led Commission Education Transformation Report. Cabinet received that and has given approval for us to make those numbers public through the oversight committee. So when the committee reports to Jamaica, I know shortly, then it will have the allocated time to take questions and to explain the costing of the full implementation of that report.
And as it relates to steps being taken to prevent another leak as it relates to CXC.
Okay. Okay, so we work through, we mean in the Ministry of Education and Youth, work through the OEC because you know that they are the entity to oversee the exams. Or maybe at our next press briefing, I'll have them back because they would know the intricacies of what to do and what to say and not to say, and I wouldn't want to say anything that at this moment they do not wish to be disclosed.
Thank you,
And
Minister.
you had I think she had another question.
All right.
Just one more for the Minister. Are you able to say whether or not there have been any update as it relates to teachers who have resigned this week? And I know some of the heads of the institutions are here today. Are you able to gauge whether or not we are, whether or not enough teachers are graduating enough to fill some of these spots that we have, the vacancies that we have now?
Right, so in terms of teachers that are graduating, for this year, I know about approximately 1,200. I do understand that in some critical areas, there are still gaps in mathematics in particular. We're hearing now English language. And so as we engage more with our teacher education institutions, we will hear from them as to how we can incentivize students, what kind of a support we can provide to attract more persons to attend these colleges. You heard when I reported earlier on, we have 14 institutions in Little Jamaica training teachers in a variety of subject areas. We need to put more resources behind our teacher training institutions to enable them to expand their enrollment capacity. And so these are some of the conversations we'll be having with them going forward as to how we can do this. Yes, scholarships, I know Dr. Troop has been saying that we can provide additional scholarships as well to students. So these are some of the things we have to discuss that will be on the table as we begin our monthly roundtable or monthly discussion with our teacher training institutions to ensure that we really focus on those critical areas of need within our schools.
Thank you, Minister. I have two questions here from Shalois Michael at NNN. One to you, Minister Williams, and she's asking, what has the feedback been so far regarding the dress and grooming policy in schools? Are the schools and students complying?
All right, yes, thank you for that question. As you know, we did publish our draft policy on dress and grooming to allow everyone in Jamaica to read the policy, for there to be discussion, if they have any input into it, to come back to us. So far, we've only been hearing discussions in the public sphere. I don't think we have any written submissions just yet. I was delighted on Monday morning when I went to the transport center at Halfway Tree and ran into the most beautiful group of young men from Jamaica College who expressed just unapologetically their full support for the dress and grooming policy. That's very positive because that means full acceptance and adherence to the policy.
Thank you, Minister. The other question is to Minister Samuda, and Ms. Michael is asking, the Prime Minister said that the residents of Trelawney, St. James, Hanover, and Westmoreland are set to benefit from a water supply system that will cost approximately $200 million to implement.
Is there a time frame on this, and when will it begin?
It's actually $209 million that is required from the Martha Brae system all the way around to Savannah Lamar. And the citizens will benefit from significant investments in 3 water treatment plants that will upgrade output to in excess of 30 million gallons, or by in excess of 30 million gallons daily. It will also see significant upgrades in storage facilities right through Trelawney, St. James, Hanover, and Westmoreland by way of tanks, as well as upgrading of existing facilities. One of the issues that we do have is that the line that runs from Martha Brae and the line that runs from Rossies into Hanover, neither are right-sized and both are very old. These are your main transmission lines. So when you have challenges there, it's because they pretty much leak as though you're pouring water into a grater. They're older than I am. The reality is we will invest that money, and we are starting this year. The line going from St. James into Hanover will commence this year. We're working with the Water Commission and the Ministry of Finance to look at the mechanism to trigger this investment starting before the end of the calendar year. Other elements, certainly as it relates to your water treatment plants, will take a little more time. Those are more complicated negotiations, and we'll be going to market for those. But the distribution lines and indeed the increased storage will actually start this year.
Thank you, Minister. Let's take a question from the floor.
Morning, Minister Samuda.
Sure.
May you provide an update on the Mahogany Vale Dam that was announced by the Prime Minister during his budget presentation?
So the Mahogany Vale system, for those who don't know, is very close to Hagley. Well, rather would be very close to Hagley Gap on the border between St. Andrew and St. Thomas. We are doing the surveys now to identify the best place for that dam. We're also validating studies that had been done some 10, 15 years ago to ensure that the economics behind it is what we would want. We do know that there is significant water supply where the Yalos River and the Negro River combine. That is generally in Mahogany Vale. From as far back as 1923, the then Public Works Department of the colonial government had identified that this would be the best storage point for water supply in St. Thomas and in Kingston and St. Andrew. We've done several studies. In the 1950s, it came up again. In the 1980s, the Yalos pipeline that we have now coming into Kingston was the first part of the Mahogany Vale system and would have been commissioned by then Prime Minister Siaga. So the Mahogany Vale system has always been contemplated as a part of the water supply system for Kingston and St. Andrew. The WRA is validating past surveys now to ensure that the water supply from these rivers is what we anticipate. The Met Service has written to its colleagues to ensure that what we're experiencing now is indeed cyclical as opposed to a permanent change in weather supply. We're also in consultation with the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology to ensure that they have sufficient space on the grid to take the energy offtake that would make this project viable. So in essence, this project is in development. The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation has a team working both on this and the desalination options for Jamaica. And updates will come soon.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Jamila
Sure.
again from TVJ. I have 2 questions for Minister Samuda. The Black Tank Initiative, a timeline of September was given. It's now October. What was the reason for the delay? And I heard about the steps being taken to ensure that the most vulnerable benefit, but can you expound on how this will happen?
So 1,300 tanks have already been distributed by the National Water Commission as a part of its drought mitigation efforts. The system that will be taken for this Rural Water Resilience Program, as announced by the Prime Minister, to distribute in excess of 50,000 tanks, is very similar to the system that is used for the social housing program. We've convened a group that will assess recommended persons and recommended areas for the distribution of these tanks. So in essence, tanks will go to the most vulnerable and those living below the poverty line, and will be in areas that the NWC has assessed will have a very difficult time in terms of extending their utility footprint in the short term to providing this space. To note, and just so that those listening are very clear, this is not just a black tank initiative as it relates to the one that Minister Mackenzie would have mentioned. It is a rainwater harvesting initiative as well. So the tanks will be provided to households along with the appropriate guttering systems and plumbing fixtures. We will also be taking young men and women from the communities that are unattached and training them for installation. They'll also be helping us to geotag these tanks. So if someone says, this address got a tank, can I bring it up? You'll be able to audit it as well. It also becomes a basis for future trucking routes, because having a map of where there is storage will allow us to plan better in terms of trucking and start to pull the gray area out of the trucking space. Now, you asked why some of these things take long. Quite frankly, our procurement rules that we have agreed on in our country are very heavy. We also have to acknowledge a productive capacity locally. When we went to tender earlier in the year, we had difficulty even getting persons to commit to being able to supply the volume of tanks that we want to provide in the system. We've resolved that. I expect contract award within a matter of 2 weeks, and we are going through now the analysis process, having had the recommendations coming from constituencies to be able to roll out. So end of September, early October, not much different.
I mean, it is different if you're looking at...
It's not much different though, so we agree to disagree.
Additionally, and I'm speaking here as a member of parliament, we did announce this program, but I think recognizing the delay that would take place, the government did, through the NWC, distribute over 1,000 tanks, and constituency in my constituency benefited from those tanks, and constituencies across the island. So it's not a case where nothing has been done. It's a case where recognizing the challenges of the procurement process, we have to follow the rules. I do not want to be standing here answering questions as to why we didn't follow the rules. I would rather us follow the rules and do it properly, so that the people can get the benefit in a fair and just way.
But for further details, we've also taken recommendations of in excess of 3,000 names for the 5 parishes that represent households that need these tanks. We're doing the social assessment on 3,000 households to be able to stand here and ensure that when we commit to you that this program has benefited from equitable distribution of these tanks, that we are certain. So that process is underway. We have the names, they're doing the social assessment, the surveys of communities are underway, and the program will get on board. We'll get on track shortly.
Thank you, Minister. Do you have any other questions?
We do. I believe Jamila says she has 2, but I also have a question. I gather Ms. Francis wants Minister Mackenzie involved. So, Minister Mackenzie, this one is for you. Ms. Francis asks, given the adverts put out by the EOJ, has there been a budget submitted for local government elections? And she would like to know the figure.
Well, the matter has not yet reached that stage for an announcement. The elections are due the February, and there is still time for that to be done.
Thank you, Minister. Jamila?
2 for Minister Mackenzie. Recently you visited the St. Anne Infirmary. You weren't so pleased at the state of the facility. What has happened since you pledged $50 million, but at the same time you said that the facility needs relocating because of its proximity to the sea? How do you invest $50 million in a space where you're trying to relocate at the same time?
Well, if I follow up on the response that Minister Samuda gave about procurement, it is going to take us about 5 to 6 years to build a new infirmary. If we have to go through the protocols that have been established for that, it is going to take us some time. There is a need for the expenditure to be spent at St. Anne. I had a meeting on Friday, last Friday, with the team from St. Anne, looking at the infirmary and the things that needs to be done. And we are commencing the work, first of all, looking at the kitchen, because that is one of the areas of grave concern. I'm glad you raised it. I got a letter from the Press Association raising concerns about my not allowing the media to take pictures of the infirmary. it is the practice that institutions like the infirmary, that we allow no cameras in these facilities. So it is not something new. And the reason why the press was not allowed to come with me is because they had to go through sensitive areas of the infirmary. So it was not barring the press. All we said to the media was, look, you can't come into this section of the infirmary. We do not allow pictures to be taken of the residents. It is not a practice that is permissible. So if there is any feeling that we exclude the media, I want to dismiss that and to say that is not so.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you very much, Naomi. I think we have a final question.
A final question from Chris.
Morning, Minister Mackenzie. It's for you.
I am Minister Mackenzie.
Morning. May you say how many water shops have been constructed thus far, and are they having the desired impact?
We have constructed 12 so far, and yes, they are meeting the requirements of the various communities. I visited the first one that was built in Clarendon.
Penance.
In Penance, in Clarendon, and believe me, the community is really grateful for the water shops. And I must make the point that when we were constructing these facilities, we did so based on demands. We did an assessment of the area to find how viable it would be, and we are pleased so far. And as I said before, there are 4 more of these projects lined up to be constructed between now and the end of this calendar year.
Thank you very much, Minister. We're right on time. I want to thank you all for attending, especially our teacher training institution representatives, also representatives from the Ministry of Education and Youth, representatives from the National Water Commission, and I see Evan Thompson. I understand that you brought rain. Thank you for coming, Evan. Also want to thank our viewers, you, and also the support staff from the Jamaica Information Service, the Office of the Prime Minister, and PBCJ, as well as the members of the media, both online and here, and you, our viewers out there. Thank you all for joining us this week for another post-cabinet press briefing. We'll be back here next week on time, same time, Wednesday at 8 a.m. Have a wonderful and safe day.
The following is an excerpt from the 2023-2024 budget presentation by Prime Minister the Most Honourable Andrew Holness.
Over the last fiscal year, there has been a marked increase in the system coverage, reliability, and level of service, with several projects being completed and commissioned into service in 2022-2023, funded from the NWC's resources. The profit is yours. It is you, the people, who will benefit from the increase in investment in your water supply. So when the NWC says, look, we're going to do Barron Hill to Samuel Prospect pipeline replacement works in Trelawney, how is that funded? It's funded from the NWC's budget. When they say we're going to do a new distribution network to serve persons in the new building area of Nain as part of the Essex Valley to Junction water supply system in St. Elizabeth, that's coming out of the profit and resources of the NWC. Efficiency of public sector entities pays a dividend to the citizen stakeholder. The NWC will replace aged pipelines to the Greater Black River area, including between Luana through Middle Quarters to New Holland, as well as from Sandy Ground into the town of Black River. I was there recently to open some of these investments. The NWC will do the extension of pipelines to supply the community of Mile Gully in Christiana, a new full supply scheme, including development of a new source, pipelines and storage tank in the Mesa River, Bullhead Mountain, Douglas Castle communities, which straddles the border of Clarendon and St. Anne. That will be done. The extension of the Negril water supply system to serve Non-Pariel, Mount Airy, Retirement, Orange Hill, and Negril's and Negril Spots, Westmoreland. These are already done. So they have done several storage tanks to improve reliability and reduce energy consumption at Fraser's Hill in St. Thomas, Liberty in St. Anne, Westgate in Montego Bay, Yorktown in Clarendon. So they have done quite a bit from their resources. These projects are in addition to the previously mentioned $6 billion capacity upgrade in Kingston and St. Andrew with the installation of new major transmission lines along Mandela Highway, 6 miles, Spanish Town Road, Beeson Street, South Camp Road, and connecting along the Palisadoes into Port Royal. The people of Port Royal will be happy. They have had a water problem for a very long time. It is going to be corrected now. In addition to the replacement of secondary transmission and distribution lines along Waltham Park Road within Whitfield Town, and those were completed. Another major pipeline replacement will include the ferry to Rock Pond Forest Hills via Plantation Heights. Several other island-wide water supply upgrading and expansion projects are planned for 2023-2024. 21 projects with projected expenditure of about $2.5 billion will see NWC service being extended to new communities. Plans are being finalized for works along East Kings House Road, Lady Musgrave Road, Arthur Wint Drive, and Tom Redcombe Avenue in Kingston and St. Andrew, and Grange Lane and Brayton Road in St. Catherine for major water infrastructure upgrade in terms of coordination with the NWA. I have directed the NWC to pursue 45 small projects to install new systems or incorporate existing small local systems to extend coverage to communities which are presently inadequately served. It is expected that the associated expenditure of $200 million will have an impact on the lives and well-being of close to 40,000 persons. The Greater Mandeville Water Supply Improvement is a major capital project aimed at effecting substantial improvements in the service levels in communities extending from Pepper in St. Elizabeth to the full limits of the town of Mandeville. The works being implemented include the sourcing of the development of new water sources, new transmission mains, electromechanical pumping equipment, and associated storage tanks. Implementation is scheduled for completion in 2024, and this is going to be done at a capital cost so far to date of $680 million. The total cost is $3 billion Jamaican dollars. The long-awaited Content Water Project, which was proposed as far back as 2009 to provide water to the corporate area from the Rio Corbett, has finally been settled commercially under a PPP framework. The water purchase agreement was signed in November 2022 for the establishment of a water treatment plant in Content in St. Catherine to provide 15 million imperial gallons of water per day. Construction is expected to begin in June 2023 and will last for 24 months. This arrangement will fundamentally improve the supply stability to Kingston and St. Andrew and Portmore and support growing housing and commercial developments.
Traveling to Jamaica? Submit your customs and immigration declaration online for faster processing. Visit the enterjamaica.com portal, complete and submit your declaration prior to departure. Upon arrival, proceed to the immigration kiosk and swipe your passport to confirm your trip details and declaration. Once done, proceed to the customs hall to retrieve your luggage and final clearance. The online C5, making air travel easier. You may contact us or the Passport Immigration and Citizenship Agency for more information.